Hey, security peeps. We are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. It is CISO Thursdays. Happy New Year again.
Dang.
I know I said it last time, but Happy New Year again. Before we get started, please, everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You're already seeing us on LinkedIn. Subscribe. Folks that are coming on, please tell us where you are coming in from, where you're listening or viewing from. That's always awesome. And I will go around and introduce ourselves. So first, my phenomenal, wonderful co-host of 3.5 years, Chris Foulon.
Howdy, everyone. I don't know Alan's here, and I all of a sudden want to say howdy, but welcome. That's all I have to say. I'll pass it on to Alan Alford to introduce himself, and then we'll go over to James, Hollywood Square Styles.
Okay, I was going to let James go first because he's James, but I'll go. I'm Alan Alford, CISO and CTO at TrustMap, host of the Cyber Raiders podcast, general rogue about the cybersecurity community, many times over CISO, obviously a masochist as well.
That's the only reason we become CISOs, Alan, is because we do, I feel like we enjoy punishment.
Yeah, it's got to be the predominant factor. That's all I can think.
Right, because if you do it once and then you go and you do it again and again and again, yeah.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So, hey, everyone. I'm James Azar. I'm a CISO. I host the CISO Talk podcast, the Cyber Hub podcast. And you can go to our new Cyber Hub podcast website where you can see Breaking Into Cybersecurity and actually binge on all your episodes in one beautiful, lovely place.
I love it.
So cyberhubpodcast.com. Just click on the Breaking Into Cybersecurity podcast, and you can check out all your favorite CISO Thursdays, any single one of those leadership episodes. Really, really cool stuff right there. So you can do that while you're working, taking a walk, or just whatever. And pretty soon we'll have our podcast in an app. So you'll be able to go to the App Store and get all of our episodes directly in your app and interact with all of us privately through our mobile app.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, we have fun stuff. I mean, this is the killer crew right here.
I'm so happy that Alan is here. Like, I haven't had my Alan dose since like before my baby.
I agree.
Right?
This is like a booster shot of Alan.
Yes.
You guys are too sweet.
Yes.
Y'all are my favorite show to come crash, by the way. Like, every time I get invited to come crash y'all, I'll knock my schedule around to do it.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, so before we get started with our topic, some folks are checking in with us. Please, everybody, let us know where you are viewing us, listening from, all that good stuff. So Stephen Upshaw, he's always here. We love you, Stephen. He's from San Diego. He's bringing sunshine to a cold day in Northern Virginia, that's for sure. Arturo Sanchez, first timer in here all the way from El Paso, Texas. Awesome. Well, welcome.
I love El Paso.
We hope you come back.
Best street food in all of Texas is in El Paso, and I know that Alan's going to be like, no, you're wrong.
You're wrong, but I love El Paso, and there's some phenomenal street food in El Paso. No disagreement. The elote and some other stuff in El Paso, there's some phenomenal. The street tacos, there is some killer food there to be had for sure.
Good stuff. Zoe is here. Hey, Zoe, you have to tell us how that job is going. Dutch says 4 of my favorite peeps, and you are.
I see him say that on every podcast with 4
people. Dutch, come on, man, you cheating on
us. Are you saying Dutch lacks discerning taste? Is that what I'm hearing?
We have to have Dutch come back. Dutch is also fun. Ariel says, hey, she is chiming in here from Dallas. These are some new folks. I like this.
Hey, Sharon, we got Dallas representing.
I know. So folks in Texas. Sharon says, viewing from Durham, North Carolina. Hey, Sharon. I know she's been here before. Joshua from Minneapolis.
That's a plant. He's on my team at TrustMap.
Someone go.
Saying lies, James, lies. Arturo says we have the best tacos. Oh my gosh. All right. And I said your name right. That's awesome. Okay, folks. So as we get into it, James, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So, anyone heard of a thing called Log4j? I don't
What's
know.
that?
Log4j. Anyone heard of it? Very, very interesting. So, I'll tell you why I want to bring that up, because Alan, I'd love your input on this. So, we're doing a clubhouse room this morning, right? It was only 6:30 a.m. Eastern, right? It's not early for anyone. And one of the things we were talking about was Log4j to the non-technical people who were like, well, we don't understand what this is, what the big deal is around Log4j. And I was trying to explain it in a way that would make sense. So think that you've got a part in your car that your manufacturer of your car doesn't even know that part is in your car, but that part could be detrimental to the operation of your car. And if you don't patch it, remove it, or fix it, then you're kind of screwed.
You mean like a bolt that secures any part of any vital instruments within your vehicle, and this bolt needs to be randomly replaced in 100 million vehicles or more?
Yeah,
it's more than that to me, because it's not just a bolt. A bolt is a necessary component that you know is there, you want to be there, and serves the one purpose of a bolt. It's almost like you bought a bolt, but what's actually there instead is a long skinny rod that keeps sticking into the works of the engine and causing trouble inside the engine when you think you bought a bolt. And yes, to your point, 10 million cars that need it changed as well.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I don't know about you, Alan, but I think for a lot of us that are practitioners, this was, and Chris as well. Let me not forget Chris is a practitioner as well. For a lot of us, this was kind of one of those things where it was the most helpless I've ever felt about a 0-day vulnerability in my life.
Interesting. And that's over SolarWinds, Citrix.
Over all of those, because I knew what I had. I knew I had Citrix. If I used SolarWinds, I knew I had SolarWinds, right? I knew I needed to patch it.
Yeah.
With Log4j, it could have, like, someone who's just doing chat bots for us could be using it within their software, and there's no way for me to know.
Yeah. You don't know. So it's an invisible bolt that secretly sticks into the inner workings of your engine. We're extending our metaphor even further.
So think of this bolt as being critical for every part of the car. It's critical for your engine, your transmission, your lights, your car seats, your steering wheel, your hydraulics, your opening your car doors and closing your car doors, windows rolling up or down, AC working, heat working, your Bluetooth. Think of it as like being everywhere, because Log4j is literally like a component that's everywhere.
Yep. And every time one of these things hits, right, a CISO goes through two instant things, especially if you're a CISO at a vendor like I am, right? You go through three instant things. The first one is, oh my God, what are we using in-house? The second one is, oh my God, what about all my vendors? And then the third one is, oh my God, I am a vendor. And I better be prepared for the influx of people asking me the same question I'm asking my vendors. The supply chain, I'm part of it both directions. And so as soon as Log4j hit, first thing I had to do was immediately reach out to all my peeps and say, okay, are you using it? You using it? You using it? You using it? And thank God this time, most of the answers that came back immediately were like, no, we don't even have it. So I had one vendor finally come back and say, yes, we're using it, but we're already doing this and that, and it's contained in the following way, et cetera, et cetera. Like they already had some mitigating, compensating control stuff going on. And that was it for my vendor pool. I had one who was already on top of it, and everyone else wasn't using it. So I, like, one of my 3 boxes I was able to check almost immediately. Usage in-house, again, lucked out, didn't have it anywhere. Our app isn't using it. Our core SaaS, that we provide our customers wasn't using it. So when the vendor emails started coming into me, I was able to just go, don't have it, don't have it, don't have it. So Log4j is the first one of the majors that has hit in the last 20 years that I actually got a free pass on. And I think I've earned it. I think I've earned a free pass. It's about time I finally got one. But I ducked this one almost 100%.
So you're sitting on the sideline, you're watching it kind of start to take shape. What are some of your thoughts around it?
Oh, I'm ordering meals and I'm ordering booze for my fellow CISOs and friends of mine that, I had friends that when this thing hit, it was like, okay, see you in 4 weeks, and I'm not going to sleep for the entire 4 weeks. Best of luck to me. This was a devastating one for the industry. This one was huge because Log4j is everywhere. And again, I somehow lucked out, but that doesn't mean, I'm this big a part of everywhere, and Log4j was everywhere. And I don't know a single CISO, a single peer that didn't get hit to some degree or another. I haven't been running around bragging about it or talking about it, but I'm the only one in my circle that didn't get hit.
Now they all know, and they're like, "Oh, that's why Alan is so refreshed.
Right.
No bags under his eyes. He actually took a Christmas vacation."
Right. That's why he's on Slack. Yeah. It's this one was devastating. This one, to your point, was bigger than most because it's everywhere. It's intrinsic, and everyone's having to sift through their own supply chain, not just their own internal usage. And you don't know who wrote some code. You don't know what little apps were written in-house 10 years ago by some guy. You know, it's not just vendors. People found this stuff scattered all throughout their own internal sphere. And weeks later, we're uncovering it. And then the implications for some of the bigger environment, you know, VMware and everybody else starts saying, yeah, we're using it too. And these kinds of bits of news, it's a concentric, it's like throwing a stone into a pond. The rings just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think the VMware piece, though, is probably the one that has me most. I feel like the VMware is the equivalent of Microsoft post SolarWinds.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
That's a good analogy right there.
Right, because 80% of the world's cloud operates on VMware. That's one thing that people don't know. Karen Warstall, who was on one of my practitioner briefs, she wrote it in the comments. She goes, "People don't understand. Patch your VMware now."
Yes.
And Karen was the former CISO at Microsoft and a few other really, large organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's at VMware now, if I'm not mistaken. But she goes like, "You need to get this stuff patched because 80% of the world's cloud operates on VMware."
Mm-hmm.
And that number is just mind-boggling. So you could be impacted by this and not even know it. Your cloud provider could be running your instances on VMware, and you don't even know it because how many people actually pay attention to that?
Right. It's,
I think the other problem with this compared to, say, other celebrity vulnerabilities is that other celebrity vulnerabilities had one patch, you went in, you patched it, and you were good. This had a rolling cycle of patches, 3, 4, 5 different patches over the course of 1 month. So now you have developers and security practitioners at major organizations that rather than having to go through one patch cycle, you're needing to go through 2 or 3. And every time a patch is released, they now have to reconsider their entire environment and whether it's worth it or not to go to the next patch level. Whether the incremental difference between 2.15 and 2.16 is worth the effort from the team to go to the next one. And then from 2.16 to 2.17 and then 2.17 to 2.11, it just became such an overload on the teams that you're having a lot of dev teams and others that are burning out after this one compared to, say, other ones.
Yeah, Chris, I think what you're bringing about is the most underrated thing in all of security and all of IT management. It's probably one of the big things that most people miss when they're trying to look at a career into security, which is patch management, right? And actually the PMP position of running patch management for a specific security org. Patching is hard. No one ever said that patching is easy. I mean, if you look at even some of the like Patch Tuesday was this week, right? So look at some of the Microsoft patches that came out. Some of them were completing patches from patches that were issued in April of last year. So they patched the specific CV in April of last year. They've seen that there's more issues with that patch, and they've released the second patch for it in January of 2022. So I think,
James,
yes, ma'am.
While you're explaining, I always like to, especially when we're talking about people coming in, breaking in, explain what patch management is if they don't happen to know what that is. As a career, potential career opportunity way in.
Right. So a lot of people think that security people do the patching, but we don't. Very rarely do security people actually do patching unless you're patching a security product. So if like you're a Pulse Secure customer, you pretty much do that like on any day that ends with a Y, right? But patch management is essentially the role that most security teams have, which is kind of like a project manager who gathers, who he or she may gather all of the patches that need to be done within a specific environment, and then ensure that the teams that need to do the patching are getting the patches done in time, meaning they're building a life cycle. So this patch needs to be done, but it's not a 0 day, it's nothing urgent, so it can wait 30, 40 days. And so a lot of this is project management, but you do need to have an understanding of risk management, of the operability of different softwares within an environment, and what patching does. You've got to know, it's good if you have some QA background. So that way you're able to kind of have that conversation, but you don't need to be overly technical to be a project manager.
Yeah,
and patching is an update. Go ahead, Alan.
I was just going to say, don't forget the people skills, because patching, to James's point, you're getting others to do the work that needs to be done. And those others are reluctant. Those others have possible implications of, if I do this thing you want, it's going to blow up something that I'm held accountable for every day. And having those people skills is so vital when you're dealing with patch management.
And Alan, explain to them what is a patch, because they might not even understand. They may not know what that.
Any piece of software released by the vendor to update that vendor's software offering. And usually it's, in the case of security issues, tends to be the primary driver, I think. And there's always bugs and bug fixes and things like that that drive patches as well. But in the case of something like Log4j, everyone who's using Log4j is coming out with patches. We talked about VMware earlier. There's a VMware patch. Each vendor who recognizes we've got a problem. Microsoft put out patches. Everybody put out patches.
And every Tuesday it happens. Well, Microsoft says every Tuesday, right?
Every month on the first Tuesday.
On the first Tuesday of the month.
It used to be weekly, and they've dropped down. Patch Tuesday is only monthly now. It's no longer weekly.
So there's a sadistic thing about our industry where there's this Patch Tuesday where every single vendor is like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to release all of our patches on this Tuesday. It's like someone saying, hey, you want to take a shower? Yeah, instead of moderating it over the week, you can only take a shower on Tuesday. And that shower needs to last you all week. So you better moderate yourself, right? It's the same thing. It's very, very sadistic, because you get Microsoft and Adobe and SAP and all these different, like every single major company in the globe does this, and it's wow.
Yeah, and it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah,
to your point.
I think the other thing.
Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the other thing with patching and patch management that individuals need to think about is you have to prioritize that work for the organization against their other initiatives. Yes. So you have to prove to a dev team, a manager, department head, why taking away a developer or a system admin away from doing another task that can produce your organization money to do this patch. And oftentimes it's that battle and that prioritization that happens in order for something to win or to happen.
Yeah.
Dutch says, James, you're right. Karen is at VMware. She is brilliant and approachable.
Yeah, Karen is awesome.
Requiem 2099 said the whole team is in the house. Yes, we are. Folks, if anybody that's new on here or new to security or new to technology, if you have questions or if we're talking and you don't know what anything means, I try to remember how I was years ago and now. Like, what is that? What does this mean? What does that mean? Please ask us as we're going down this sometimes rabbit hole of things that are happening in the industry. So phase 2 of this discussion was going to be, James, you came up with the second part, which was around what, the talent component?
Right. I mean, then we started talking about this talent component of patch management. I'm kind of going to kick this to Alan because I want to ask Alan a question. And Alan, you've done this so many different iterations. What are some of the skills you found in the most successful people that ran patch management programs for you?
Number one, people skills, like I said before. To Chris's point, you're convincing people to do a thing that's actually against their own interest. Everyone in the company is measured by something, and developers are measured by uptime and not having bugs and not having crashes. And here you are introducing what in their experience is bugs and crashes, because very oftentimes the vendors produce that security patch and it causes a functional problem, or it fixes a security issue and is incompatible with some other piece of software. Like, Microsoft releases a patch and suddenly your VPN quits working. Things like that happen, right? So people skills is number one. Project management skills, you've got to be anal retentive. You've got to be able to run multiple threads to ground and juggle them all and be aware of status and stature and all that. So project management skills are a very good one. And then finally, back to anal retentive, I think, James, you said it earlier, that QA type skills are just super valuable. That natural proclivity towards root cause analysis. The thing broke. I got a thing on my desk that broke. I want to know why it broke. And I'm going to start taking it apart piece by piece until I find out, aha, this is the gear that snapped into. This is why the clock quit ticking. That kind of mindset is so vital for that world as well. And so, to James's point, I didn't list a single security skill just then. I listed character traits, personality skills, people skills, soft skills. None of that had anything to do with security.
And the next one I would add to the list, kind of venturing into security, is risk management, because you have to be able to talk to the different stakeholders and explain what the risk is to their organization if they don't install a patch, and do so in a rational way, understanding the impact that this vulnerability can have in the environment, understanding potentially other compensating controls, and then what are the pros and cons of installing this patch at this time to a specific application. For example, trying to patch a mainframe can have huge downstream effects when you think of something as complex as a mainframe, and that needs to be considered.
So Mohammed says, patching software is something you've probably done. Did it require programming skills, which we've been in the middle of answering, and testing software? What do you think?
So
Mohammed.
Programming skills, no. Software testing, absolutely. Every time you install a patch, whether you like it or not, you just became a software tester.
Yep.
Because, sure, it probably fixes the thing it claims to fix. The vendor probably tested that part. Does it actually do what we want it to do in terms of fixing the problem we said we're out to fix? But then the impact to the rest of the system, does everything else work? Did it break something else? You will do software testing if you are doing patching.
Cool.
A lot of it. If you're in a responsible organization, let me preface that. You will do a lot of software testing on patching if you work in a responsible organization. Do you need to do coding, programming skills? No, not necessarily. I think unless you're doing like mainframe stuff, like some of the old school patches that still require, like command scripts to get them done and so forth. Today, most of it is about as hard as it is to update your iPhone software. Really, it's
literally going to say that.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's creating a script to be able to download the software and do the install, and that's as much programming skills as you need is just to run the script.
Right. It's learning how to write in PowerShell in most cases, because the scripts you're writing are all PowerShell.
So David Ruiz.
Microsoft.
Oh.
What?
I said if you're in Microsoft, it's PowerShell.
Who's not in Microsoft, Alan?
A lot of Linux organizations.
Yeah.
That's what, 5%?
No. A lot of the infrastructure that runs major cloud vendors runs on Linux. So understanding Python scripts and running Python scripts, especially if you're supporting infrastructure as code, is going to be something that's important. So you better learn your apt-get.
So what you're saying is learn Python and learn PowerShell, because without those two, you probably, are pretty good.
See, now we include the Linux folks.
Now, my buddy Lee now would be so happy, right? So, yeah.
You're talking to a man with a Linux penguin tattooed on his arm, just so you know.
I've got a Linux penguin like in here somewhere, right? I've got like one of the Linux penguins in here somewhere.
Nice.
I don't know where it is.
So David Ruiz says he absolutely agrees. Proving the need is a battle to make sure they understand, and when the organization does, it makes a huge difference. And this was in response to Alan's and Chris and James's point about having people skills and influencing without authority and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, because you don't have any authority. You're literally, think of yourself as being a consultant. You get to sit with everyone and say, all right, this is all the things we need to patch. And some people are looking at you and be like, well, we don't need to do that. And if you've never been in a patch management meeting, let me tell you, you ever want to see people get really agitated, sit in a patch management meeting with someone who's written the original script and they go like, there's no need for this. We've thought about this. Our compensating controls don't require us to patch this software.
My software is perfect.
Or what Alan said, convincing them to do something that they have that it's against their best interest potentially.
Well, it's not against their best interest. Again, there's an aspect of patch management that I think is often overlooked, and that part of it is risk management and modernization of your environments, right? And a lot of patches, while they address bugs and security issues, think of how many patches Apple does that are feature upgrades. And you, person who wrote X to do X, is fine with it, but the business wants all these different feature upgrades. And these feature upgrades require a patch. So whether you like it or not, it's not always, I got to patch this so we don't get hacked. Sometimes I've got to patch this so the business can do better because it's adding additional features to our environment, right? And I think that's a big piece of what sometimes people miss when it comes to patching is we seem to always, kind of think that it has to do with security. And that's because we're narcissistic security people who think the world, like the earth, everything revolves around the earth, right? Is how we see it. And security is earth and everything revolves around it, right? But it's not. Security is earth and everything revolves around the sun, and sun is revenue. And if you don't put that in your head, then you're going to be in a world of hurt.
So can junior people, I know there's always a discussion around levels or, how much experience a person can have to get into a position like this. Is this a place where a person with zero experience, fresh out of school, fresh out of a boot camp, something to that effect, can they get into a patch management role or a patch? I don't know. Do they have patch analysts? Can they get into something like that? Or is it something where you need to have something else, some other?
Yeah. I've had folks on my team in the past who were junior, whose job was tracking the state of the patches. Like the vulnerability management guys do their thing and the output gets spewed onto the table. Somebody's now got to go through and say, okay, to fix this one, you have to go find this patch and apply it. To fix this one, somebody has to cross-reference the problems to the patches. And then somebody has to track, are the patches actually getting done? And again, it's people skills, project management skills, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you can do to convince people. And you're always going to run into those walls. To James's story, there's other similar stories. Like I've never worked in an enterprise that did not have at least that one server. Everyone knows the one server I'm talking about as soon as I say that. Hasn't been updated or patched in God only knows how long, running proprietary code that was written by a guy who's no longer with the company and hasn't been for X years. And everyone's deathly afraid to touch it. And every time you talk about patching, that's the one system that's going to remain running Windows XP and will never be updated kind of approach back from the business. To James's point about revenue, I worked in one company where the actual licensing issuing software for the company's products to its customers was that server. Every single sale flowed through that server. When the customer first set up and got their license sent to them, it was sent by that server. And my people came in and said, this thing needs to be patched, needs to be updated, needs to be upgraded, overhauled, yada, yada, yada. And the business looked at us like we were absolutely raving loons, which from their perspective, we were. So you don't have to have high-level skills to be the person having those conversations. You don't have to be the high-level skills to be the person tracking. All you need to do is come back to the CISO and say, hey, I found the one server, and it's these guys that own it, and they're putting up a fuss, handing off to you now, and let the CISO go do those battles. But you could be a new person and join up. And to what Sharon's saying here.
Sharon says that her friend started in a patch management role for a bank, and she was working with Qualys, and that's how she started her career. Great.
And let me tell you something. If you start in patch management, your a lot of people want to start like blue team, red team, right? Which I understand that, Mr. Robot and a bunch of different Hollywood movies have made you think that that's all security is, but it's really not. Patch management actually makes you a more balanced and will probably be a better trajectory across your career from answering the question that's right before Sharon's, right? Which is, how would you motivate people to go into, engineering and whatnot? Here's what ends up happening. You start in blue team and red team. So it's like everyone wants to be a wide receiver or a running back when they're trying out for sports, right? Because those are the star positions. But there's only one guy competing for tackle, right? So everyone's going towards those like star positions in security because they think that that's where it's at. And then they go, well, I'm stuck in this role. I'm a SOC analyst and I can't get out of it. Well, because you're going where everyone is. You start in patch management, you have better business visibility, you've got good security and IT visibility, and your chances of moving up within a year or 18 months are going to be far more than being a SOC analyst, a red teamer, or blue teamer, because you're going to skill positions that have so much competition. And the moment you're down, someone else comes in and takes your place because there's unlimited skill positions. But if a team loses their left tackle, and I'm just giving you guys a sports example, if you don't know football, I suggest you go to DuckDuckGo and search American football and understand what skill positions are, and then understand what a left tackle is, right? Tom Brady would not be the quarterback he was if he didn't have a really good left tackle watching his blind side, right? In patch management, you're essentially the left tackle.
Right.
That's what you are.
Well, the good thing is, and the reason why I love this podcast, all of you, is because we get to talk about these various roles. Because I can assure you that some people here probably didn't know what patching, may not have known what patching is, doesn't know what patch management is, didn't know that patch management jobs exist, are likely, maybe going on DuckDuckGo and putting in patch management jobs. What does that mean? What do they look for? So it's, I think, a huge education to some folks that just have no idea. They don't know what they don't know. So, All right. So Requiem says, I've known many great workers stuck in that entry-level job rut, great at their basic IT job, but unsure of how to bridge that gap to level up to, quote, engineer. What would you recommend to motivate them? I know, James, you kind of semi-answer that. Anybody else have anything else to add?
The thing that I would add to that is that it provides that business visibility that many other in security don't have, because you're focused on your VPN product or your firewall product, and you don't know who uses it or what downstream. But when it comes to patch management, you know every single application in your organization, who runs it and why they need it, that many others in security don't have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which ties into a piece of advice I always give to answer Requiem's question and to dovetail completely with what Chris just said. Once you're that person that knows all the things and all the people that do all the things, now you can also be the person who goes to those people and says, hey, if you ever need help with anything, I'm your guy, right? I'll drop what I'm doing and assist you on whatever little project it might be. And the VPN team takes you up on it. You learn a little more about VPN. And the CASB team takes you up on it. You learn a little more about CASB. And the SASE team takes you up on it. You learn a little more about SASE. Firewall team takes you up on it. You learn a little more about firewalling. Always volunteer. Always be willing to be that person who dives just a little more deeply in than what you are today. It doesn't have to be overnight. Suddenly you are the firewall guy. No. Just, I'm here to assist. What can I help with? You guys are doing an all-nighter to replace and update. How do I help? I'll stay Friday night with you. Volunteer. Dip your toes in every pool you can find, and eventually you'll be a swimmer.
Yeah, that's how you get out of that entry-level rut, right? Because so many people get stuck as a SOC analyst or red teamer. And again, because everyone's trying to start their career. And then, how long we've been doing this now? For nearly 2 years, right? Like, you guys have been doing this podcast for 3.5. How many people have said, oh, I don't want to be a red teamer, blue teamer, or SOC analyst as an entry-level role?
That's all they know. When they show up here.
But that's because the boot camps, right? Because the boot camps, that's the sell. Telling you, right? It's like, hey, come be a hacker for only $7,000. We'll teach you everything you need to know about hacking.
In 24 months.
24 weeks, you'll be Mr. Robot.
24 weeks, exactly.
So I started in middle school as Mr. Robot, quite frankly, at a time when there were no laws against such things. I will point out. I don't have a what do they call that? X years after the crime, you're scot-free or whatever. I don't even have to worry about that because there were no laws in the books when I started. But it was purely for hobby. It was purely for fun. It was purely to explore the known computing universe at the time. And then I went off and did completely other things with my life. And the way I ended up becoming a security professional is, I remember those skills from way back when I was a kid, to some extent, to whatever degree you remember what you did as a kid. But it was mostly just general purpose IT stuff that every time there was a security-ish component to it, I was the one who volunteered. That the anti-spam thing also does some anti-malware stuff. Let me be the one to learn that. We got some new firewall modules we can install, et cetera, et cetera. I literally was just a regular IT person who had an interest in hacking and things of that sort, and just volunteered every time there was the littlest overlap with security. I was the first one in there and going, let me do that one. And eventually they let me do those things, and eventually I became the security person.
That's how it goes. Requiem says, seriously, an unnamed agency ran the entire network scripting efforts off one old unmaintained server using homebrew scripts written by one guy that left long ago.
Every shop
on bullet wounds.
You know what? If people only knew that our entire financial system pretty much operates the same way, they'd be fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Right?
Requiem is calling you Kevin Mitnick.
I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment, Alan.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I think he's saying it as a compliment. Dennis says there's value to both 10,000 hours Gladwell as well as range Epstein. New folks should consider gaining range early in their career. So moving around and doing different stuff. David Ruiz, I'm a rookie CISO. Bringing them conversations and solutions are truly challenging. What I do is I look for organizations that suffer from those vulnerabilities and present it that way, as this is what will happen to us if we don't fix it. So again,
it's a good starting position.
Convincing skills.
It's a good starting position.
As long as they don't keep using that fear, uncertainty, and doubt in every single conversation. Because if all you do is present the doom and gloom, eventually you're going to be the little boy that cried wolf or the little girl that cried wolf, and people are not going to believe you anymore. They're going to be like, oh, well, it happens all the time. It's not going to happen to us. Yeah. So you have to go in with a more realistic conversation. You can't just use the FUD all the time.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And one of those, David, to just give you an example and piggyback off of what Chris just said, is talking about the risk that specific vulnerability poses to the business, what it could do should that vulnerability be exploited to the business or to the operations of the business or to specific departments. And sometimes you don't even need to go to the IT folks that are supposed to patch it. You can go to the person who owns it on the business side. Could be the CFO, the COO, the CIO, the CTO, whoever, and have the conversation with them and get their buy-in to push it down so that people get it patched as well. A lot of times we want to go direct, but sometimes, especially if you're a rookie CISO, David, I'd recommend you build the relationships across with your other C-suite executives. And if you're having a hard time getting stuff done from a patching perspective, look to who owns that product from a business operations perspective and get them on board, so that it becomes part of, something that you're doing together.
Cool. So Will says, can't believe I nearly forgot to tune in this week. Great to see Alan Alford and James today. He's blaming COVID. We hope you feel better, Will.
Yeah, get better.
Yep. When security relies on the, what is that? Anti-Cathera mechanism? I don't know. And there are no ancient Greeks left to run the code. It's not ideal. I don't know what anti-Cathera is.
That's it.
I mean,
that's it.
You still have that in a lot of different places, Renee, where, let me put it to you like this. SolarWinds was the best thing to ever happen to Microsoft. The best thing to ever happen to Microsoft. The best. Yeah. Because it got them to go into their pockets and spend money and update their entire source code. Do you know how many lines were in there were written by some guy that Bill Gates hired and fired after 3 months?
Right. 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yep.
When he just started, or as they were growing, or when they did their first Windows licensing deal and someone wrote a bunch of scripts that are no longer valid but are sitting in that source code that still communicate, that are somewhere in there, but you've got billions of lines of source code.
Dead limbs.
right? And all SolarWinds did was get them to do the job that no one wanted, right? I'm sure they had like, we'll update 1 million lines a year in our source code. They probably had like a 15-year plan. That 15-year plan became a 4-month plan, right? After SolarWinds and after they knew that China and Russia got their taking on their source code.
Exactly. So Arturo wants to know, what are some other good entry-level positions to look out for along with patch management?
Junior GRC positions.
Yes.
Right. So junior GRC positions, project management roles within security. Good. A lot of people overlook project management because they go, that's not security, but it absolutely is. It gives you the depth that Dutch talked about earlier, right? You understand security. You also understand players. You get involvement across all the different business sides. What am I forgetting, Chris? Alan?
There's privacy. There's risk management. A lot of there's security awareness. Being a good communicator and being able to facilitate that to other individuals within the organization, that's critical. But you don't have to know that much more than the people that you're teaching this content to. So a lot of individuals within security awareness are marketing individuals or teachers or things like that come over, and they understand the information and they can convey that to others in a very entertaining way so that you're not bored by PowerPoints.
Right. I think another hack might be to even research jobs, put in security. I mean, it's going to give you a lot, but anything that's peripheral to security, where you can understand, you're not in the role, but you're touching the role. So you're interacting with security team. I was in HR. I'm still in HR, but I was recruiting for security, and I didn't know at the time that it would have been so fascinating to me that I would want to dig in more. But I was peripheral. Like before that, I had been doing all other types of IT recruiting, developers, Java, even non-IT, finance and accounting, and attorneys, and all different kinds of stuff. So roles that align to your skill set that you already have that touch into security some way is also another
always
good way to get into security.
Take apart any big enterprise and count the number of bodies in all the departments, right? The odds are the risk team is maybe the same size or a little smaller than security. The legal team is probably bigger than security. The IT team is guaranteed to be bigger than security. Yeah. And every one of them has roles that intersects and overlaps with security, and you can always come in through those paths as well.
Right.
I know a lot of CISOs these days are looking to build up their application security arms. And for those of you who are in development, who have that interest in code, that's a good way in. For those that don't know code but want to get in that way, you can start learning code. But I'm just saying that's one of the job listings that I've seen that has been so hard to fill for many organizations.
Yep. And Sharon wants to know, does vulnerability management deal with patches?
Absolutely, because vulnerability management is the operation of finding where those vulnerabilities exist and double checking, i.e. doing the QA that the patches were applied successfully and you're not able to still get in through that previously patched hole.
And if there isn't a patch, then you're putting in the compensating controls and mitigation in order to ensure that that patch doesn't become a liability. I think that's the big piece with vulnerability management roles is you've really got to be an out-of-box thinker. Because if there isn't a patch, and in a lot of cases, there isn't a patch. And when you go tell the vendor, we found a vulnerability in something and you need to patch it, well, I think the rules are 90 days. You got to give them 90 days before you can publish it, right? And guidelines, right? You got to give them 90 days so you've got 90 days where this, you might be the only person in the world who knows that. And I never buy that, right? Like I never buy that. There's one security researcher in the whole world that found that one vulnerability. I say there's one honest security researcher in the world that found the vulnerability and reported it. There's 10 others that have sold it somewhere else for someone that's already making, running scripts and trying to take advantage of that specific vulnerability.
Right.
Because there's more money on that other side than there is on that first one. And so vulnerability management is very much I think it's a critical role within security. It's underrated. I think it's more interesting than red teaming and blue teaming.
Yep.
It's definitely funner than being a SOC analyst. Let me tell you that much.
Oh yeah, 1,000 times.
Why does everyone pick on the SOC? Those
You know what?
so
I'd rather
valuable
get
and have such a critical skill set.
It is, but it's such
It
a
just gets
mundane.
boring after a while.
It's such a mundane automatic job, Alan. It really is. It's an at this point, any vendor who comes and says like, I can't automate your SOC, but I want to get in there, I'm like, get out of here, turn around, like leave, right? Like, and I'm throwing stuff at them as they're leaving. I'm like, go, right? This is an absolute waste of my time.
Yeah.
So Requiem wants to know, and this is in regards to David's comment, which I'll go back to. How do you combat the quote, security is a cost center viewpoint, i.e. trying to reframe cyber as a business enabler, not a bottomless cost?
I can do this one.
Yay.
So there's a lot of them, just an absolute lot of them, right? First off is if you're in a B2B culture, business to business, right? As opposed to business to consumer, it is super easy to demonstrate that security is a value prop because everybody that's consuming your business's products and services, you've become part of their vendor supply chain and they need to know you're secure. Just like, I told my story earlier about having to call all of my vendors. Are you guys secure? Are you using Log4j? Where are we at? Security is a differentiator. If you and 3 of your competitors are all offering roughly the same services and you're the only one who can offer them securely, that matters. So B2B is much easier than B2C. With B2C, you have to somehow convince individual consumers that they care about security. That's a whole other story. But then the second thing is business objective alignment, right? One of the things we do at my day job is we tell security practitioners, don't just measure risks, don't just measure all of these maturity scores and everything else you're doing, but always align to business objectives. You can always take the business objectives you were fed from on high. CEO says this quarter we're going to reduce our sales cycles. We're going to aggressively expand into the European theater. We're going to, whatever the goals might be, there is guaranteed to be a way on a goal by goal basis that you can show where something in security achieves that goal, helps achieve that goal, speeds that goal along, removes an obstacle to completing that goal. You can always on a goal by goal basis, find that connection and advertise and sell that connection.
I'd double down on that because if you also frame it the other way, if security takes down an aspect of the organization, it's costing the organization money. So if you preemptively help with the security from design, implementation, early in the sprint, early in the development cycle, then you remove that from happening later on, and it might cost X here, but it'll cost 10X after it's been live. So try to invest the time when it's only costing you X versus 10X.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Requiem says, thanks, Alan. Joshua says, amen. Okay. Requiem had a funny comment. I've worked in and around enough NOSC socks. It's awful.
I think Fusion Center is the new word du jour.
Yeah, that's the new word du jour.
They're trying to make it cool. Right, it's kind of like it's kind of like renaming something that's bad, right? Like just rebranding it. I can give you a lot of examples. None of them are good.
Yeah, you're no longer being punched in the face, sir. You're receiving vigorous kinetic face enhancement.
It's Botox. You're no longer being punched in the face. It's Botox.
Oh, Lord. Dutch agrees with Chris regarding FUD. Start with what category of risk is the biggest or most concerning to the business? 1, reputational. 2, threat of litigation. 3, operational. Then what do the business execs care about? Because they own the risk. That's such a good point.
Preach it, brother.
Such a good point. Okay, Sterling says here, master or refine a skill you have or want to have that not everyone is doing. Security has been advertised so much that in a sense, you need to step away from the common road. And as Robert Frost says, quote, the road less traveled by Great discussion all. I thoroughly enjoy CISO Thursdays. Well, thank you, Sterling. I 100% agree with that point. And Gabriel says, hello from Houston. There's a lot of Texas going on in here today.
Heck yeah.
Please, what's more fun? TPRM or ERM? What's TPRM? I know enterprise risk management.
Technical project risk management or enterprise risk management. So enterprise risk management is more on the overall focus of the enterprise, primarily on the business side, where TPRM, technical project risk management, is more focused on the risk management around a smaller product or portfolio. So it's a smaller in scale, more focused. It depends where you like to play, whether you like to play at the 40,000 foot view or you like to play down in the gutters. That's your choice. So that's what I would say. On regards to, I was going to say a point earlier with the road less traveled, for an entry level position or someone coming in entry level, if you do documentation, you will be loved by everyone on the team because everyone hates to do documentation.
Oh my God,
and if you can help them with documentation, you'll gain a lot of favors and you'll learn so much about the environment along the way.
So a little bit of a plug of how I ended up in this space. And one of them was I picked up and started doing documentation because the person who hired me was like, I want you to do stuff all the other guys don't want to do. Like, nobody wanted to do that. So that's number one. And number two, he's like, because I had been in HR and had known so many hiring managers over so many different groups, he was like, you know so many people that when we need to get things done, we could just ask you. So when stuff would fall off and they'd be like, who do I contact for this? I'll be like, oh, contact so-and-so, contact so-and-so. So it goes back to what you all talked about earlier in terms of being in a role where you interact with a lot of business folks. Because again, some security is touching so many different avenues and getting people that you want to reach out to get something done that they don't necessarily have to do. So, Chris, I know you have to leave soon. Boo-hoo.
We've got a few minutes left.
We have a few minutes. But there were a couple other comments in here. Sterling says, LinkedIn shows how many people have applied to a job. If you're putting up against 400 other people, myself included, we need to dig smarter, not deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Super.
Like I said, everyone's going for skill positions. No one's looking at, the meat and bone type of positions like, patch management or risk management or GRC or
documentation,
vulnerability management. Yeah.
Right.
Implementation, project management. No one's looking at those.
Gabriel said third-party risk management. That's what it was.
So
it's enterprise risk management versus third-party risk management.
So TPRM tends to be in the realm of the CISO, tends to be in the cyber side of the house, generally speaking. ERM tends to be under the chief risk officer, or if they have that role. It's to Chris's earlier point, ERM is more business and less technical. It's not just higher level; it's also more business and less technical. TPRM tends to be more technical and less business. Tends to ride with the CISOs in my experience, although. Obviously, from an ERM perspective, you should be evaluating all your third-party vendors, not just for technical risks, but for any other risks as well. 6 in one, half a dozen in the other, pretty much what Chris said.
To further Sterling's point, DevSec skills are becoming more significant, right? As my mentor once told me, if the infrastructure security is failing sound, hackers are like, oh, well, how can we get in through port 443 or, any other one? Yep. Good,
application security.
And Requiem says, so basically cyber minus engineering equal communicator, cyber minus senior management equal salesman.
So cyber engineering is communicator. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, minus.
Yeah. And CISO all CISOs are salesmen to a certain extent, period. You are.
All senior level executives are.
Yeah.
Sharon says, I was thinking about switching to a SOC role. I didn't know it was that.
No, these guys keep picking on SOC. I'll tell you this about the SOC.
Go to the SOC, Sharon.
If you are the sort of person who loves detail, I mean truly loves detail, and loves to pull at threads, one tiny thread sticking out of your clothes, and you start to pull it, and you realize, hey, this could actually be something critical that's holding the sleeve together, and I'm going to investigate this and dig into this and turn the shirt inside out and follow the thread all the way through and figure out where it is and cut it off or sew it off where it needs to be cut off or sewn off. If you're that sort of person, the SOC is a fantastic place to be, and it is a great launch pad for other careers in cyber as well. If you can get in the SOC and it's available, I definitely recommend everybody do at least a rotation there. Like all these other roles we've talked about, do them, but also do a role in the SOC.
I agree with Alan. I learned a bananas amount. I learned everything I knew from being in the SOC. And it was a rotation, and I just learned a ton from being in there. So, All right, folks, it is 3 minutes to the top of the hour. So I want to make sure if anyone has a final question or wants to get it in quickly. Alan, any final comments before we wrap?
I just wanted to thank you guys again for having me out. Every time I come to the show, I have a blast. I love you guys, love your audience, love the interactivity. Y'all are doing a fantastic job. James, you are looking very much like somebody who doesn't have a newborn baby. I'm impressed. I thought you'd be like huge bags under your eyes and falling asleep during the recording.
That was last month.
That was last month. I have a superstar for a wife who is who's been very generous in allowing me to get a few more hours of sleep every night.
That's wonderful.
But baby's 3 months today, so hopefully we're over the overnight hump.
There you go. We'll set her up with a mani-pedi and a weekend at the spa. Like, take care of her.
Yes.
That is the plan.
Amen, Alan. Amen. Okay, Sharon says, thanks, Alan. We thank you too. Love for you to be here. You come back anytime. We love having you.
A lot of fun.
It's so much fun. So much fun when Alan is here. Alan, Dutch, it's some folks that come on. It's just a blast every single time. Final comments before we go. Requiem. My experience is easier for entry-level early career people to wrap their brains around the technical roles. Understanding and communicating soft skills applied to GRC, risk, etc. is more difficult. It depends on, I think, your skill set. Like for me, it was very easy for me not to wrap around technical and to be sitting around talking to people. Like that's what I like to do.
I think there's more to that, but we can dig into that next week.
Okay, we'll dig in next week. Will, thanks, guys. Thank you all. Thanks, Alan. We will wrap next week. Same time, same place, 1 p.m. Thursday. I don't know who will be here, but we'll be having fun regardless. Have a good week, everybody.
Y'all be good.
Bye.